Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Monday, October 28th, 2019. And here are your top stories. The bank of mom and dad is booming, and most of us are not recession ready. It's Social Media Monday, and that means it's time to take a look at all the social media trends in retirement, markets, and even benefits. And joining me now from San Francisco, California, Devin Banerjee. He is the Senior Financial Services Editor from LinkedIn. Good morning, Devin. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. It's another beautiful Monday and another opportunity for people to save and plan for their financial futures. I know that a lot's going on the social media community that known as LinkedIn. One of the things that really struck me was that the bank of mom and dad is booming.
That's exactly right. This was one of our more popular items we featured last week. It's some research from Pew, some original research it did, as well as an analysis of Census Bureau data. Effectively, it finds that young workers in the U.S. are increasingly leaning on their parents for financial support. So it found that today about 24% of young adults are financially independent, and that is down quite significantly from just a couple decades ago when 32% were considered financially independent. Now, what's interesting is that that contrasts with what people think 22-year-olds should be. So today, 64% of adults think these young adults should be financially independent. And again, it's only about 24%. So as I said, this is stuff for housing costs, household expenses, student loan repayment, as we've talked about, that is really dogging the young adult population here in the US. And there was an interesting gender cut of this research as well. Effectively, it found that young men and young women are moving in entirely different directions when it comes to financial independence. The proportion of men financially independent from 1980 to today has gone down quite significantly, 63% to 52%, while that proportion for women has gone up to 42% from 38%. In addition, young women have now surpassed young men in college enrollment and completion. And the employment gap between young men and young women, so the proportion who are employed, has effectively closed over those past 4 decades. So women are really on the rise in education, employment, and financial independence, while young men have actually struggled quite a bit during this most recent economic recovery.
Well, Devin, we just celebrated National Retirement Security Week last week. Savings has been top of mind for many Americans, and obviously on this network. I'm wondering, just based on this information, what the savings rates must be significantly low, but also for mom and dad. If mom and dad are using more of their resources, more of their capital to support their children, and maybe for rightful reasons, right? They may not have a job. They may not have a job that pays well enough. Those are all justifiable. What is that going to mean to the retirement abilities of these parents?
And exactly some of the quotes that Pew featured with the research hit at that. So some parents are saying, as exactly what you just said, that we understand, our son or daughter needs support, but this is drawing from our own savings, our own nest eggs. And when you look at means and medians, things are not very rosy, not just for young adults, but even for adults and the boomers of today who are starting to draw on what they have saved and their retirement funds. And, as I said, things are not rosy for them. And so this is really weighing on adults as well.
Just a question for you. We were talking about this yesterday on the podcast. I talked about it with you and also Ali Melito from MarketWatch. A question, the U.S. birth rate, very low as relative to past years. When you look around the globe, Japan, China, other places, really aging. And I'm wondering if what we're describing here, and I'm not saying that, I'm not expecting you to have a scientific answer, but if some of this is based on that birth slowdown, because, you look at the greatest generation, gave birth to the baby boomers, they arguably had probably the best trajectory of any Americans. And I'm wondering if some of that has a residual impact of what you're describing and what we're describing here?
Yeah, I think so. I would certainly say, some of this financial assistance is effectively a transfer of wealth from that generation to this current, young adult generation. But I think, some older people would say, and we have seen some of these comments, that they would rather transfer that wealth, after they're gone or in bulk, and it shouldn't be supporting day-to-day, expenses and financial wellness of their children.
Yeah.
And so one thing Pew said is that adults of children, a majority of them actually believe they are supporting those children too much. 55% say they're supporting them too much. Only 10% believe they're supporting them too little. And about a third of them say they're supporting these children about the right amount. But a majority still do think they're supporting the young generation too much with day-to-day financial wellness.
Yeah, well, maybe there's some lessons there for parents and children as well as on the way. Well, Devin, great story, great conversation. I want to change gears right after we come back from the break. Apparently, most of us are not ready for a recession. Stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. 3 out of 4 economists predict that a recession will occur by 2021. That's not great news, but do you know that most Americans haven't prepared for a recession? Devin Banerjee is still with us. Devin, how can this be? We've been talking about recession for at least the last 5 years, and now we see this article, this thread that we're not all recession ready.
Yeah, this was a survey from Bankrate that we featured last week. And again, sorry to bring another pessimistic story.
Way to kick off the week, Devin. Way to kick off the week.
But 40% of these respondents, 40% of Americans, are saying they don't believe they are ready financially for a recession. 16% actually think they're not at all prepared. And to answer your question of why, there are many different factors in there. But one is that what experts are saying is that they believe people have not taken enough advantage of the good times to prepare for the bad times. So what does that mean? During these good economic times, people have not realized that they should take advantage of it to pay off debt, to boost emergency savings, to boost long-term retirement savings, to even start studying things like asset allocation, even for everyday Americans who have retirement funds invested, et cetera, or other funds invested. It's during the good times that people should, again, take advantage and put themselves in the strongest financial position for when the bad times come, rather than waiting for those bad times. So there was some good news in the survey, which is the steps Americans are taking during these good times, although the numbers are not very high. But at the top of the list was spending less. People are thinking about spending a bit less. After that, people are thinking about saving for emergencies at least, healthcare emergencies or other general emergencies, paying down credit card debt. And after this, the numbers get quite small, unfortunately. The proportion of people who are saving more for retirement is quite low. The proportion of people looking for more stable or better jobs is quite low. And 31% actually said they are really doing nothing to prepare for a downturn or a recession.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, quite pessimistic. And it makes me think a lot, as you and I have talked about, these days, if you just think about the end of last week, the headlines were almost a record all-time high in the stock market. Unemployment is at like a 50-year low. And it just goes to show that a lot of these headlines are looking at the tails and the extremes. And when you look at those mean and median figures of, people's financial wellness or wage growth and all the factors that go into it, things are not so rosy. And I think, there's so many of these surveys and so many of these numbers, but one thing I do like about them is it shows more of what the average American is going through and how they're feeling about their financial wellness. And it's unfortunately not great.
Yeah, it obviously says that there's more work to be done from all of us to encourage other people to save. And I do think that you're absolutely right. I think, number one, we've talked about it all the time, a fear of missing out. And that impacts not only the millennial generation, impacts my generation, Gen X, also my parents' generation. People are spending now when they have it, as opposed to doing what you were advocating before earlier, which is saving. And, life is always best when it kind of goes in that average, uptick, right? And hopefully I'm doing that right on the screen. Kind of hard to do things backwards in the studio, but you get what I'm saying. And I think if you approach life in that manner, it makes planning for the rainy days better. That being said, we know, based especially on what you covered in segment one, it's not always a perfect world for everybody, and we all go through ups and downs. But being prepared, having the right mindset, I think goes a long way towards being prepared for negative outcomes like a recession, which are only temporary. It's not like we're going to go into a depression, knock on wood. But I think it's a lot of it's, Devin, is a mindset.
Absolutely. And it's that long-term mindset is effectively what I personally, although I'm not such an expert, but that's what any expert I think would advocate for. As you said, recessions are temporary. They're also pretty inevitable if you think about it. I mean, they're short. They are typically short-term, but they are inevitable statistically every 7 or 8 years in the U.S. And so having a long-term plan and mindset where you are saving for a 30, 40-year horizon, but also a 10, 20-year horizon and a 10-year horizon. And you're also, this is going into some of my personal beliefs, but you're also, managing lifestyle inflation, and you're not succumbing to the FOMO and spending because you're the couple, the friends who are a couple just bought a great house or a great car. So, again, a lot of personal beliefs. I'm not saying everyone should do that, but I think the long-term mindset, or even just sitting down and having a plan, an investment plan, a savings plan, a spending plan, et cetera, is a first step, a necessary first step.
Yeah, I think that we talk a lot about financial literacy, but in my mind, it's also literacy about that mindset and thinking that way, because a lot of times you're not born thinking this way. Someone has to instill it in you. Your parents, or a father or mother figure, or a mentor. I think that's something that is really needed when we talk about financial literacy. Devin, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for getting up early with us on BRN AM. And you have a great week, and we will talk to you again very soon.
Sounds good, Jeff. Take care.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Hope you found it helpful. Hey, have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should interview? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same